They made a critical mistake when they decided to mess with me. I'm about to tell you the story of how a group of HOA officials turned my peaceful life into a living hell and how I transformed that hell into a money printing machine. That's right. They built a fence blocking the only road to my ranch. But apparently they never heard the saying, never anger a Texas rancher. My name's Ethan Morgan, and for most of my adult life, I never asked for trouble. I work remotely as a business consultant, which pays the bills, but my heart's always been in building things, fixing up old radios, programming weather sensors, making machines run smoother than they were ever designed to. Maybe it's the Texan in me. Maybe it's just how I was raised. 2 years ago, I finally bought the land I'd been dreaming about since I was a boy. 30 acres of quiet earth just outside Austin. The old ranch house was worn and leaning, the barn barely standing. Most people saw weeds and wasted space. I saw potential. I saw freedom. I spent my weekends and late nights fixing it up. Rewired the whole house, replaced the plumbing with my own hands, built an automated irrigation system that responded to soil moisture and rain patterns. My vegetable garden thrived. I even rigged the chicken coop doors to open with the sunrise and close automatically at dusk to keep the foxes out. Folks from town started dropping by on weekends. Some came for eggs and fresh greens. Others came just to walk the land, sip coffee on the porch, and feel what it meant to breathe without traffic noise. I didn't mind. The ranch had room, and peace, once shared, grows stronger. The only road that reached my property passed through a neighborhood called Golden Meadows, a tidy HOA-run suburb with perfect hedges, identical mailboxes, and neighbors who waved but didn't smile. I wasn't part of their HOA. I didn't live within its borders, but the road had a legal easement recorded decades ago, guaranteeing access to my land. It was ironclad, or so I believed, and for a long time, there were no problems. Frank and Eleanor Hamilton, the elderly couple who lived near the edge of the development, were kind folks. Frank even helped me troubleshoot one of my solar systems when the charge controller failed. Eleanor made blueberry pies that could heal a bad day, but peace is a fragile thing. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I found the letter in my mailbox. Thick paper, corporate header. Urgent HOA meeting. Something about unauthorized access and community enhancements. The language was vague, deliberately so, but the message was clear enough. Someone wanted to challenge my right to the road. I stood on the porch that evening, letter in hand, the sun setting behind the barn I'd rebuilt myself. The wind moved softly through the grass, and the chickens clucked quietly as they settled in. I'd built everything here with my own hands. I wasn't about to let someone take it away with a vote behind closed doors, not without a fight. I showed up at that HOA meeting in clean jeans and my best flannel shirt, the one without grease stains. Rain had rolled in that evening. Texas spring storms are unpredictable like that. So I pulled into the Golden Meadows Community Center parking lot with my truck windshield streaked and my boots still damp. I parked between two spotless SUVs, the kind that never see dirt roads. Inside, the room looked like a real estate seminar, neat rows of metal chairs, fluorescent lighting that hummed overhead. About 24 residents had already taken their seats, chatting in hushed, polite voices. Most of them glanced at me, then quickly away. My boots left wet tracks on the polished tile. I noticed the subtle shift in posture, the way some folks clutched their handbags a little tighter. I didn't belong, and they wanted me to know it. Frank Hamilton caught my eye from the third row. He gave me a small nod. Reassurance, maybe. I nodded back and sat near the back. At the front stood a tall man with hair like silver fox fur, perfect and unmoving despite the humidity. He wore a navy suit and a smile that never reached his eyes, the kind of smile that usually comes with a sales pitch or a trap. "Welcome, everyone," he said smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks. "I'm Maxwell Bennett, your new HOA president, recently relocated from Dallas, where I worked in real estate development." He let the words hang, like we should all be impressed. Next to him stood Patricia Lawson, the HOA's manager. Her lips were pinched so tight it looked like smiling might break her face. She held a tablet like it contained state secrets and kept glancing my way with open suspicion. Maxwell ran through a list of community updates. landscaping contracts, pool renovations, upcoming events. The usual HOA fluff. But then he reached the final item on the agenda, and the real reason I was there. Now regarding the matter of road security, he said, his tone shifting subtly, like a curtain being drawn. As many of you know, we've approved plans to begin development on the adjacent Golden Meadows estates. This will bring tremendous value to our community, up to a 30% increase in property values, according to our estimates. He clicked a remote and architectural renderings lit up the wall behind him. 12 executive homes, each with pristine lawns and glistening pools. A private clubhouse, tennis courts. Then came the turn. However, he continued with the casual confidence of a man who's never been told no, we must address a persistent issue, the unsightly ranch that draws unnecessary traffic through our neighborhood. This creates safety concerns and diminishes our community's aesthetic. I sat up straighter. That unsightly ranch was my home. Maxwell's next slide showed a rendering of a stone-columned gate, complete with cameras and landscaping. Construction begins tomorrow. The new gate system will secure our community and enhance its image. Access will be restricted to residents and approved guests. I felt my blood start to rise. I stood slowly, the metal legs of my chair scraping against the floor. The room fell silent. My name's Ethan Morgan, I said, voice steady but low. I'm the owner of that so-called unsightly ranch, and I have a legal easement that gives me permanent access through that road. Blocking it isn't just wrong, it's illegal. Maxwell's smile didn't break, but something hardened in his eyes. Mr. Morgan, he said, measured and condescending, while you may have enjoyed informal access in the past, the HOA now controls all road-related decisions. Our priority is community safety. I held up my hand, cutting him off. It's not informal. I've got the recorded easement, filed with the county, tied to the deed. You can't gate off my land. Patricia stepped in then, her voice brittle. You can apply for an access card, $300 annually. Approval takes 5 to 7 business days. The gall of it nearly made me laugh. They were offering to sell me access to my own home. Let me get this straight, I said. You're fencing off the only road to my ranch and telling me I have to pay to get through? It's quite generous, Maxwell said, turning to the room, considering the increased security and property values this development brings. I looked around at the residents. A few avoided my gaze. Others looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. That night I couldn't sleep. Rain tapped at the roof, and my mind raced. I kept pacing from the kitchen to the porch, replaying the meeting, every smug word from Maxwell echoing like a hammer in my skull. The next morning I heard it, beep, 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 the sound of construction equipment backing up. I rushed outside, heart pounding, and there they were, a crew already digging post holes, pouring concrete, unloading a prefabricated gate structure. I sprinted down the driveway. Hey, who's in charge here? Just following orders, sir, one man said without meeting my eyes. Talk to the HOA. Within the hour, Maxwell showed up in a pressed shirt and polished shoes holding a rolled-up permit. This is happening, Mr. Morgan, he said smugly. You can fight it, but I suggest you adapt instead. It's easier. I clenched my fists. This isn't over. No, he said, turning to leave. It's just beginning. As the gate rose into place and the fence posts lined the edge of my property, I realized something chilling. They weren't just trying to fence me out. They were trying to force me out. The morning after that gate went up, I drove straight to the county office, mud still on my boots. The clerk was an older woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a no-nonsense attitude. She found my easement document in less than 10 minutes, printed and stamped a certified copy. This one's been on file since 1972, she said, squinting at the page. Solid as they come. Strange anyone would challenge it. Yeah, I muttered. Strange. I drove from there to Olivia's office. My college friend turned real estate attorney. She reviewed the document with a grim expression. They've got no legal leg to stand on, she confirmed. But Ethan, this kind of case, it's not about law, it's about pressure. They know fighting it could take months in court, and they're betting you won't have the patience or money to outlast them. She wasn't wrong. I'd already missed a full day of work, and now I was looking at legal fees, court filings, and sleepless nights. They'd built the gate fast. Too fast. That meant this plan had been in motion long before the meeting. I was already behind. That night, flashlight in hand, I walked the fence line. As I neared the new gate, something didn't look right. The post supporting the electronic arm seemed too close to a cedar tree I remembered as being inside my boundary line. I pulled out the survey from when I'd bought the ranch, and sure enough, the gate's footing overlapped my property by about 3 feet. A small error, but a powerful one. The next morning, I called Ryan Cooper, a contractor buddy who had helped me restore the barn last year. He met me within the hour, tape measure in hand. "They messed up," he said, chewing on a toothpick as we walked the line. "That gate post's on your land. Part of the motor housing, too." We stood there for a moment, staring at the fence that had cut me off from the outside world. Then I looked at Ryan and asked, "What if I built a toll booth?" He blinked. "You're serious?" "They want to charge me to get to my land," I said. "Fine. I'll charge them to cross mine." By Sunday morning, we had a plan. With Ryan's crew and my electronics know-how, we could build something fast, efficient, and legal. We didn't tell anyone, not even Frank and Eleanor. I didn't want word getting back to Maxwell until it was too late to stop me. We worked through the weekend under floodlights. Ryan brought his 2 most trusted guys. I called in a favor from another friend who specialized in solar systems. I installed a security camera setup with cloud backups, a mobile payment terminal, and a motion-activated speaker that played a friendly welcome message. We even made laminated receipts. The sign out front read, "Private Road, toll $20 per crossing, monthly pass, $100. Ask about family discounts. All proceeds fund community agricultural education." By Monday morning, it was live. The first few cars approached cautiously. One woman rolled down her window and stared at me like I was a ghost. "I live here," she said. "So do I," I smiled. "This road crosses my land now. Toll's $20, ma'am. You can pay by card or Venmo." Some refused and backed up. Some argued. Most paid. Word spread fast. That afternoon, Patricia Lawson herself pulled up in her luxury sedan, sunglasses perched like armor on her nose. "What is the meaning of this?" she snapped. "Just exercising the same rights your HOA exercised," I replied evenly. "Charging for access across my property. I've got a certified survey if you want to see it." She didn't. She just whipped out her phone and dialed Maxwell. He showed up 30 minutes later, red-faced and sputtering. "You can't do this. This is extortion." "It's not extortion," I said calmly. "It's real estate. Isn't that your specialty?" He tried calling the sheriff. Officer Ramirez came by, reviewed my documents, and declared it a civil matter. "As far as I can tell," he said to Maxwell, "Mr. Morgan's on his own land. If you have a boundary dispute, take it to court." That night, I sat on the porch with Ryan and a cold beer, watching headlights crawl past the booth. I'd made $460 by sundown. "This," Ryan said, raising his bottle, "is Texas justice." But I knew it wouldn't last. The HOA called an emergency meeting that Friday. Frank told me later that Maxwell was furious, accused me of damaging the neighborhood's image. Patricia claimed I was operating an illegal business. The residents were split. Some hated the toll. Others were quietly amused. Then came the sabotage. At 2 a.m. Tuesday morning, 3 men in dark hoodies appeared on my camera feed. They tried prying the payment terminal off the wall. One spray-painted the lens, another kicked over a trash can, and yanked at the barrier arm. But what they didn't realize was I had hidden backup cameras, and every second of their stunt was uploaded to the cloud. One of them, despite the hoodie, was clearly Maxwell. Another looked like the HOA's lawyer. I filed charges the next morning and emailed the footage to Olivia, Officer Ramirez, and a few trusted residents. Then I posted the video on social media. By noon, it had gone viral. Within 48 hours, local news stations were calling. A journalist named Zoe Sullivan from the Austin Chronicle came to interview me. I showed her everything: the easement, the survey, the footage, the letters. She listened carefully, asked good questions, and took notes like a woman on a mission. The following Sunday, her article ran with the headline, "Rancher Turns HOA's Fence into a Toll Booth." Then they showed up at 2 a.m. My inbox exploded. So did public support. Golden Meadows residents began turning on Maxwell. People asked why they had to pay twice, once to me, once in HOA dues, for the same road. Others began showing up just to take photos with the toll booth. It had become more than a gate. It was a symbol, and deep down I knew the tide was finally turning. I always knew men like Maxwell Bennett didn't go down quietly. They'd rather set the house on fire than admit they built it wrong. But this time, he lit the match himself. And I was standing there with the extinguisher and the receipts. After Zoe Sullivan's article blew up, the phone at the HOA office rang off the hook. Local stations replayed the security footage of Maxwell vandalizing my booth like it was the nightly weather report. Social media didn't just react, they erupted. Hashtags like Texas Toll Booth Justice and HOA Horror trended for days. And Maxwell? He doubled down. He called a press conference in front of the Golden Meadows sign, claimed the footage was inconclusive and potentially staged. He said I was extorting the neighborhood and damaging property values. He wore a pale blue tie and a rehearsed smile, but there was a twitch in his eye that cameras couldn't miss. Too late. The narrative had turned. Even within the HOA, cracks were forming. Frank told me that longtime resident Nancy Fletcher stood up at a meeting and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You promised us a safer community, Maxwell, not lawsuits, viral videos, and toll receipts." Her friends clapped. A few board members looked down at their hands. Then came the final blow. A neighbor I barely knew, a quiet guy named George who always mowed his lawn diagonally, slipped me a USB drive. "Maxwell sent this to the board," he whispered. "I thought you should see it." On it was a chain of emails, real estate contracts, developer memos, and a damning message from Maxwell to the HOA attorney. Once Morgan realizes he can't access his land, he'll beg us to buy him out. Easement or not, we choke the access. We own the outcome. I stared at the screen, fists clenched. That same night, Olivia and I prepared the legal package. We included the emails, the vandalism footage, the easement documents, and the recording of our negotiation meeting. Yes, the one where Maxwell bragged about manipulating the board and dragging me through court. Texas law only requires one-party consent for recordings, and we'd placed a printed notice in the room. He never saw it. The next morning, I released everything, on social media, through Zoe Sullivan, and directly to every Golden Meadows resident. The emails, the video, the voice recording where Maxwell laughed and said, "Most of those idiots on the board don't even read what I send them. They just vote yes." It was nuclear. Within 48 hours, the HOA board convened an emergency session. Frank told me it was chaos. Residents shouting, people crying, Nancy Fletcher demanding answers. Maxwell tried to claim the footage was fake, that I was running a smear campaign, but nobody was buying it anymore. By week's end, the board had voted to remove him. Maxwell Bennett was officially out. His fancy lawyer quietly resigned from representing the HOA 2 days later, likely trying to preserve what was left of his reputation after being caught on camera during the vandalism. The new board, led by Nancy herself, reached out to me directly. They didn't come with threats. They came with a proposal: tear down the gate, restore my permanent easement in a binding agreement, pay for the damage to the toll booth, cover my legal expenses. It was more than fair. It was just. I accepted. 2 days later, I watched as workers dismantled the gate. No speeches, no apologies, just the sound of metal unbolting, one piece at a time. I stood there quietly, hands in my pockets, the wind rustling the fields behind me. It felt like justice. Not loud or flashy, just steady, rightful, earned. But I wasn't done. The $15,000 I'd collected from the toll booth, I used every dollar to start a land rights defense fund, to help others who were being bullied by HOAs, corporations, or anyone who thought power mattered more than people. And Golden Meadows? It changed too. Slowly at first, Nancy began reforming the HOA bylaws, making board decisions transparent, limiting presidential power, and requiring independent legal reviews for development deals. George joined the board. Frank started hosting monthly community BBQs. Eleanor brought her pies. People talked again, not just about property values, but about being neighbors. That ugly steel gate that once tried to keep me out, gone. In its place, a wooden archway I built myself. I lined it with climbing jasmine and planted wildflowers beneath it. A welcome, not a warning. Sometimes the strongest fences are the ones we take down together. 1 year later, you wouldn't recognize the place. Where the toll booth once stood, I planted native grasses, added a bench, and placed a small wooden sign that reads, "Never pick a fight with a rancher who builds his own tools." It always gets a chuckle, but it wasn't about winning. It never really was. It was about standing up, quietly, firmly, when someone tries to erase your place in the world, and then choosing to build something better in its place. With the HOA reformed and the easement protected, I turned my attention back to what mattered, the land and the people around it. We turned my ranch into a community agricultural learning center. Kids from nearby schools came for field trips. Local families dropped by on weekends for gardening lessons or to learn how to build solar chicken coops. Frank started teaching basic electronics to teenagers. Eleanor hosted pie workshops. Neighbors who once avoided me now waved, parked, and stayed to help harvest. One by one, those polite stares had turned into conversations, then into friendships. The land that nearly divided us was bringing people together. I took pieces of the old toll booth, the camera mounts, the wooden frame, the payment terminal housing, and repurposed them into educational displays and playground structures. My old security system now monitors wildlife for a science program. Even the concrete slab stayed, now home to a picnic table and shade trees. Zoe Sullivan's reporting earned her an award, and she went on to cover grassroots community movements across the state. She visited recently and smiled. "This ranch didn't just survive, Ethan. It became a blueprint. And in a way it did. Not just for fighting back, but for what to do after. When the shouting fades, when the cameras are gone, when it's just you and the land again. The truth is, I never wanted to be in a battle. I just wanted to live honestly, build quietly, and be left alone to make something good. But sometimes when people try to fence you in, you have to remind them who the land really belongs to. So if you're out there dealing with your own version of Maxwell, whether it's an HOA, a landlord, or just someone who thinks they can bulldoze over your rights, remember this: know your boundaries, document everything, build community, and when needed, build something bold. Because sometimes the best way to tear down a wall is to make it a doorway. And sometimes the best revenge is a garden. If this story stirred something in you, whether it was a quiet sense of injustice, a laugh at poetic payback, or a tear at the power of quiet resilience, then don't let it end here. Share it, reflect on it, start a conversation. These emotional stories aren't just entertainment. They're mirrors of real-life struggles, small victories, and the strength it takes to stand alone, until others stand with you. In a world where loud power often overshadows quiet decency, Ethan's journey reminds us that waves of justice can start with a single person saying, "Enough." His is one of many unraveled fates, where someone tried to control a life and instead watched it unfold into something bigger than revenge: renewal, connection, and purpose. We share these narrated stories because we believe in their impact, not just for clicks, but to empower those quietly enduring unfairness, those planting gardens where others build gates. These are touching stories that echo in the hearts of those over 50 who've seen how life can turn, twist, and sometimes surprise you with dignity and justice, if you're willing to stand your ground. If this story moved you, leave a comment. Share it with someone facing their own fight. Subscribe for more real-life reflections where character triumphs over control. Because justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it builds a toll booth.